Welcome to On the Table, a podcast about board games, card games, and tabletop war games. Welcome back to episode 93 of the On the Table Gaming Podcast. And this week, Josh and I will be discussing the reveals of the Mother of Dragons box set, as well as the Free Folk Mammoths revealed by Creative War Games on their Facebook page. Josh, how you doing?
Pretty good, Pretty excited to see some War Mammoth on the table. Something that we speculated about.
Pretty good. We have War Mammoths here. And I know there's dragons too. And maybe if you had asked me 3 years ago when we were waiting, what was it, 2017 maybe, when it was Kickstarter time? Was that how long ago it was? Man, I would have probably been dragons. Because I remember when the Kickstarter was going on, that was season 7 of Game of Thrones. And they had that crazy dragon attack on the Lannister forces. But I think now I think I'm more excited for the Mammoth. I don't know.
So I think it's a genuinely sweet thing that's happening in the Free Folk faction. And I like I said, I love that they have now they're low to the ground infantry, but then they have giants and war mammoths. That's going to make it look really sweet.
And these, of course, came with a little bit of drama. So there's been lots of sort of secondhand rumors. But it looks like there was a mix-up and that Creative War Games were sent these units to use in a battle report or some sort of video or content to be revealed at a later date. But they had an impromptu live stream event that revealed all the units and abilities and screenshots. They're everywhere now. And, Simon reached out to them. And so they took down their video. But these images are everywhere. It kind of puts people in a weird spot.
I mean, accidents happen.
Yeah, exactly. And I know I've been there myself a few times. And, I feel bad for the content creators because, that's super stressful. And mistakes like this do happen. But it's tough because once it's out there, it sort of becomes the Streisand effect. And you just kind of got to accept that it's out there. Everyone has them. They're, on Facebook, they're on Reddit, they're all over the place. And in fact, trying not to talk about it, almost draws more attention to it sometimes.
No, I think it's fine. I mean, it kind of maybe the big reveal is not there, but it'll still be. People are still very excited about it, so I think that's fine.
And people are going to certainly be picking these up because they're amazing. So let's start with the most important ones because normally I would build up, but I feel like we just got to jump right into War Mammoths.
Sure.
So these guys look amazing. So the card art is cool. We got this War Mammoth. There's some shadowy dude in the background, urging it on. And you are limited because they're so amazing. The mammoths are too good, too amazing. You may only include up to 2 mammoths in your army. So that's okay. I'll accept it. I wasn't hoping to get 6 boxes and run a 12 mammoth army, but I will run 2. And Josh, so what do we got to be excited for these guys? What are some of the basic stats of them?
So they cost 6 points. They've got a movement of 6, hit on a 3+. They roll 6 dice. They got 3+ armor save, 3+ morale.
Can we just interrupt here? Just let me point out that their basic attack, 3+ to hit on 6 dice. Even though it's just their basic attack, it also has a cool name. That's how cool War Mammoths are.
Okay.
It's called Rampage.
That's right.
It's not just Sword Strike or Hurt Person. It's Rampage. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. Anyhow, sorry, keep going.
Yes. So they've got 8 wounds. So they do not have the ability giants where it's 1 for every 2. They just have pure 8 wounds. Can't control objective tokens. And if this unit fails a panic test, instead of suffering wounds, it makes 1 trample action, which we'll talk about in a second. But your opponent controls it during this action.
So that's terrifying a little bit.
Yeah, so basically, if it fails a panic test, your opponent gets to control where it runs away to, which could theoretically hurt your own guys here.
So I'm going to make sure, I play with people, they're not eating Cheetos or something, and they're reaching across the board to touch the models.
Yeah. But the trample action is if this unit performs any action, it may instead use trample. It pivots, then marches, even if engaged, and may move through enemies during this march. Each non-solo unit, friendly or enemy, that's moved through suffers D3 wounds plus 1 wound for each remaining rank in that unit. A minimum of 2, as many as 6 wounds by doing that trample action.
So it's not only something cool for Free Folk, but it's kind of like a Jorah Mormont buff as well. So it's a 2 for.
Oh, that's what we needed.
That's what he was waiting for. And he's like, now is my time. I'm ready to rock.
But it's interesting, right? Because it's the solo units. So that means, does that include War Machines, or are those considered solo units?
War Machine is a solo base. It's just a large solo base.
So, like, no wolves, no siege engines, no Jorah Mormont mountain that
Mountain that
rides.
rides. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I
Ma-
mean, I think that's pretty cool. It's a great ability.
yeah. D3 plus 1 wounds per remaining rank. Um,
Hmm.
Man, these guys are going to be like, if it's like free folk versus free folk, like these could be pretty heinous. This
Oh yeah.
number of
And think about like hard targets like, I don't know, Kingsguard or something, and you just run it through that unit. It's just like,
bye
they take
bye.
6 wounds. Jeez Louise.
Yeah. Oh man, we got to play some Baratheon free folk games in the future here.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I do think these things are a bit of a glass cannon still. I mean, their armor save is strong. 3+ is really good, but if they get caught out of position, they could be, you could push through a ton of wounds pretty quickly. The trick is going to be catching them because they're pretty fast, but they aren't cavalry, so they don't have that level of like sort of speed. So they're like kind of like fast infantry almost.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And at 6 points, like they
Yeah,
seem so good, but I
yeah,
think some concerns is, they've got pretty good morale. 3+ is actually pretty good. But
it's
when
very
you
good.
do fail that, the potential drawback in damage to your own troops, coupled with this unit maybe just getting put somewhere that's like not helpful. It's like basically taken out of the game for a turn, maybe if you need to reposition.
Mhm.
That could be really rough.
Yeah. And I'm sure that like you could set up situations where, if you're playing against free folk and they got a lot of infantry trays on the table, you might like if it runs away, it's going to trample a ton of your own guys. So there's a risk reward there. I still think 3+ is, unless you're piling a ton of effects on it, probably not super likely to get a lot of failed morales, but pretty interesting.
But there's that risk. And then it was Ben Carroll
Yeah.
on our Facebook page was saying, it's all fun and games until you play into like a panic heavy opponent. And he gets a free trample. And at the end of the trample, he parks your mammoth on top of a spiked wall. So you take the spike damage. And then next turn, you go to move it. You also take the spike damage when you
Oh
take your
yeah.
action. So yeah, there's going to be some dastardly things. So all you Night Watch players out there, you start hoarding your senior builders who can put out those
Right.
like free stake tokens. That'll be your mammoth defense. But
It
I don't know.
reminds me of
It's
the old
Go ahead.
X-wing days. You used to have this thing where if you put down a something on your movement dial that wasn't a legal maneuver, like you did a red move while you were
Oh
already stretched or
yeah.
something, the opponent got to then, when it was revealed, get to change it to anything they wanted. So they could literally just go, okay, cool, you're just going to fly completely off the board and instantly kill whatever that thing was. So it's pretty epic. So yeah, getting
How
to
does it
control your
work?
opponent's units pretty powerful.
The board zones, the end of the boards are like you know, glass, like like invisible walls, right? You couldn't like trample the guy off the board, right?
Um,
Because I don't think we've had like involuntary movement before.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I know now that you can kind of like you can pivot through the wall, but like I thought if
Oh
you
God. Remember when you
did a
couldn't
move,
pivot and you could be like, I'm stuck on the edge of the table.
right? Yeah, you couldn't pivot at all and move back. But I don't know. Like, do they have rules for like leaving the board?
I don't know, but that would be terrifying if the rule is that you lose it. You just I guess to
Yeah,
only run your mammoths in the middle of the field.
yeah. Like if you have a unit that moves wholly off the board edge, but then does it just hit the wall and stop? I don't know.
Yeah,
That's a
so it
good
only does
question.
like 3 movement. I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting. The other thing is like kind of interesting is like, okay, so on this card here, we're not seeing necessarily like full clarification about what it means to move through an enemy during the march.
Right. Well, I think where it gets weird. I mean, I think like the obvious one, right, is that you just move completely through and end up in free space on the other side, right? But what happens if I can move through one unit and there's another unit right behind it, and I would kind of finish my move like halfway through their tray? Like, where do I end up? Where do they end up? Can I even do that maneuver now?
I feel like you
Wow.
wouldn't be able to take it, wouldn't be like a legal maneuver. But the other thing is like,
Yeah.
what happens if you just clip the corner? Like, how much of a tray
Hmm,
do you have to go through?
right.
Like, can I
Yeah.
just
Oh,
run
that's
around
a good point.
stomping on everybody's toes, like just getting like the little corner edges and be like, ha ha ha. Like,
Yeah. So maybe the March thing is already kind of covered in the core rule book because yeah, you're right. If it wouldn't be a legal move, you wouldn't be able to do it. So you have to you'd have to position in a way that they're not able to sort of block you from. That's
right.
interesting.
People are hearing us think this in like real time here. But yeah, so if it pivots, then so even though it's marching while engaged, the trample move is just like an add-on to the march rules then, and you just use the basic march components.
Right. Well, and if you can pivot while you're engaged, you can pivot through the enemy tray.
Oh yeah, and I guess does pivoting count as moving through them?
Yeah. Well, you have to pivot and then march.
But I could just be like,
You'd have to move.
if you like attack me with like 4 people, I could just like pivot. Oh, you're right. I have to move.
To move.
Okay.
And it's
So
the
I
ones
couldn't
that
like
move that
pivot
are
over
moved
one
over,
tray and then like march through the other one and be like,
spin
I
in a
got you
circle.
both. Hey, that seems like kind of War Mammothy. This is
Yeah.
where when Chase gets a little too excited about War Mammoths and just wants to like make his own rules. That
Right,
I gotta remember
right.
we're recording this.
Yeah, because that's even a weird one there. Because if it can pivot while it's pivot and then march while engaged, it's like you couldn't. You
Because it's
normally you can't move through an enemy tray, right?
right, and it's a super long siege tray, right? So it's like
Mm.
Tokyo Drift and its back ends like swerving around.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah. Could I
I
like
feel like
march
they'll
through you and then like pivot over an enemy and then land where I could land and be like I spun around and like whack another guy, but it's just part of my like realignment.
maybe. I
Oh
don't know.
man. Okay, we're gonna have so
There's a
much
lot
fun
of
figuring this out.
like, yeah. I feel like this is going to be an FAQ for sure because
Oh,
it's
I'm sure. I'm sure once we get out, like people will start talking about it more, and it'll be like you
right.
guys were just like in the heat of the moment, not thinking of like the obvious basic rules of like marches or something.
That could also be. Yeah, I mean, we're all
It's gonna be
both
like a
pretty
user
rusty at this
member,
point. Right.
user error here, right? And then like, how is this gonna interact with some command cards? Like, trying to think of like Styre's Vengeance. There might be better targets, but there could be some times where this would be useful. Where Styre's Vengeance, where at the start of a friendly turn, you can target one friendly combat unit. If a friendly combat unit has been destroyed this round, remove one activation token from that target unit. So you could like trample through something, and then you could have a unit of yours be dead, and then like turn around and I guess you would play this and you could trample through a unit and then you could like activate again and like trample back. Just be like marching all over. You
Yeah,
could march, 24 inches down like a straight battle line, just being like, I'm an elephant.
right. Well, and I mean, the attack wouldn't be too bad. I mean, then you're rolling 8 dice on a 2+. That's pretty solid. If you happen to have to use your actual attack as opposed to the trample.
Oh yeah, I forget. Yeah, and you don't have to trample. You
Right.
may instead use trample, but you could still use like Harma's flanking maneuver.
Mhm.
Um, you could use oh man, so many things that just increase your dice. That'd be insane.
Right. I mean, the trample is still generally going to be better, I think, in most cases where you're charging an enemy that's like a heavily armored unit. But if
Mhm.
you're rolling 8 dice on 2+ against something that's lightly armored, then you actually could theoretically do more damage with that.
Oh man, you could even put like rattle shirt trophies on it. Like,
Yep.
mark
Yeah.
of slaughter where it's gaining +2 dice. So it would be attacking with 8 dice on a 3+, and it would be healing a wound every time it attacks. You could have like your terrifying like bone mammoth. That's gotta be a conversion we do. Bone mammoth's ready.
Yeah, that could be
Oh,
pretty sweet.
rallying assault, countercharge, some of those Tormund cards. There's going to be so many cool options. Oh, and fainting maneuver, Harma. So could you then like use that to get a free charge and then position it to the flank? And then next turn you could just like march through a unit sideways, maybe like multiple units that way. Oh man, this is going to be fun.
Yeah, fainting maneuver would be pretty sick. That one for sure. If you ended up like you pull off the charge, you move into the flank automatically, and then let's say they're in a battle line with like 2 units next to each other that have already activated. Magical Christmas land, of course, but you could like trample through both of them. That could be ridiculous.
Man, yeah. So I think that's like this is just gonna be so much fun to like just to play with. I think maybe I'm the
Yeah,
most excited for this because it's just like a new opportunities, new ways of thinking about the game in a way that we haven't had before. And I'm sure we were like, oh, 3+ morale is like pretty good. Like we're not gonna lose control of these that much. I'm sure that'll be an experience as well when there's like that first time where it's like, oh, you get to move my mammoth. Like what now?
100%. 100%. Yeah, I mean there is going to be that situation though where you can just get like charged, just take a lot of damage.
Now I'm wondering, are we gonna see mammoths everywhere? Because I
Mm,
think with a limit of two, I think the box will come with two. And
yeah,
so you're gonna sell like it's like the old Free Folk Raiders where like I remember just seeing boxes of those boxes of those everywhere because nobody was buying like a single unit of Free Folk Raiders. They're oftentimes buying like core box sets.
right, right.
So it's gonna be something where like it's awesome, but you only buy one. You're not like stocking up on.
Well, and I feel like I mean the War Mammoths. I mean for their points could do a ton of damage. They fit a really nice role because I feel like one of the things about Free Folk is you got the Swarmier list, you got like, and then you've got like sort of like if you have like your more like elite damage lists,
Hmm.
and to focus more on giants or cave dwelling savages, that kind of stuff. But like this is like another pretty cheap unit that could theoretically do a lot of damage.
Yeah, I
The
mean,
auto wounds are huge.
oh yeah. Yeah, and like, what are free folk armies gonna like visually look like now on the table? You've got giants, you've got mammoths. It's
Mhm.
not just gonna be like massive infantry spreads. I just love the way the faction is developing some more examples of Uh, you know, I love the way the faction's developing like just kind of a newer look, like actually on the table. And we don't even have a Heroes Box 2 yet. Like in some ways, people might argue that Free Folk like isn't even a full faction or a fully developed faction yet because we haven't hit that like first Hero Box benchmark that
Yeah,
Night's
but we
Watch and
have
Free Folks are kind of dragging their butts on.
but Baratheons have 2 hero boxes and no units, so I think I'd
Yeah.
rather have the units and not the heroes. But
I think
that's just
those old days of maybe using that as like a benchmark of like how far a faction is maybe don't make sense anymore.
right, right. Yeah. I mean, I know we eventually got Rose Knights and oh gosh, what are they called? Yeah, the Roller Faithful. Yeah. Can't find them anywhere.
Hopefully with this new switch to the way the shipping's working and as we get through these COVID times, like hopefully things will start to stabilize, at least in time for everyone to get their long-awaited dragons. And so next up we have the Mother of Dragons. So we actually had the Mother Dragon's Hero Box comes with 2 Daenerys Targaryens, so bringing the total number in the game up to 3. So we have the NCU that came in the starter set. And so it would include the Mother of Dragons, which is a combat battlefield attachment, and another NCU, but this time an NCU commander, Daenerys Targaryen, the Queen of Marine. So the Mother Dragons, though, I think is kind of one of the cooler takes here because it kind of flips on its head what the Targaryen forces might look like. So now instead of going for an army of a few really expensive units, you're going to go to an army of a few really expensive dragons. Although maybe
Yeah.
they're not that expensive now in this form. So Daenerys Targaryen is the heir of House Targaryen. So when she's in a unit, that unit gains +2 additional victory points when destroyed. So
It
people
gives it to
are,
your opponent.
yeah, they're going to be like headhunting you.
Yes.
And she's got Mother of Dragons. When you claim a zone on the tactics board, so with any NCU, you may replace its effect with search your tactics deck, discard pile. Oh, search your tactics deck or discard pile for one of Daenerys's commander tactics cards and add it to your hand. Then shuffle your tactics deck.
That ability is ridiculous.
Oh my gosh.
That is so ridiculously good. And it's borderline nuts that they even printed something like that because that is literally tutor for the absolute best example of a card from your whole deck or discard pile, something you've already played. Just get it back. That's completely crazy.
But as they say, but wait, there's more. The Mother of Dragons has a special rule called Mother of Dragons. That sort of makes sense. Your army must include Drogon, Rhaegal, and Viserion. Reduce the cost of each of these units by 2. So I guess maybe at some point we need to talk about these dragons here. The dragons are 9 points. And so they're going to be reduced down to 7 points when you take the Mother of Dragons, but you have to take all 3, which is 21 points. And Daenerys has to go in a unit, and it's a unit that if it gets killed, gives your opponent +2 victory points. So you're probably not going to just throw it into like Bolton Cutthroats or something like that.
Right.
So it's your army list there is going to be pretty predetermined for you.
Yeah, a big chunk of it will for sure. I mean, think about it. Like you have to, I mean, probably the safest place to put her is like, you got Unsullied, but their armor is not that great, but their morale is pretty good. I don't know. Maybe you put them in House Bolton Blackguards, perhaps, but
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
like
it's a
the
matter of like
shell
what's
has to
keeping
be
them
pretty
alive.
important.
I think that the defensive point is the most important. Because looking down at the dragons here, so we have now Rhaegal, Viserion, and we'd already seen Drogon. They're all the similar when it comes to wounds. So they all have 8 wounds. Same thing for movement. And then they have different attacks. Like Rhaegal has Jade Fire, Viserion has Golden Fire, and Drogon has Black Fire. So they all have similar attacks that are like short range attack, short ranged attack, and then a melee attack. But they vary in the sorts of tokens they put out. So they vary in the types of tokens they put out. Yeah. So they're all vicious. And so, Rhaegal does the weaken token after he attacks you. So D3 +3 wounds on one enemy within short range, and they become weakened. Viserion does that, but makes them vulnerable. And then Drogon does that and makes them panicked.
Here's a question.
Mm-hmm.
Is an enemy within short range of that unit counts themselves too, right? Because they're within short range of themselves. It doesn't have to be. It's not a different enemy.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, so I think templating. I think we kind of guessed this when we saw Drogon, right? Like that we thought maybe it would just play with different versions of the token. Just fine. I was hoping they do something a little bit different, but I mean, they're still definitely super powerful. Because you got basically cavalry with a short range fire that is vicious and automatically does wounds and doesn't even have to roll to hit. So think about like you are definitely, no matter what you're shooting at, doing a ton of wounds, and in some cases you're triggering all these other tokens and stuff. Like it can be pretty scary, without a doubt.
So the problem with them then is they have 8 wounds. Like they're not fragile, but
Mm.
anything that's like dedicated to killing things, like your more scarier units can make short work of them.
I would say so. I mean, like think about like a couple barrages of crossbow bolts.
Yeah,
It does like knocks their armor down to a 5+. It's probably the morale doesn't do anything, right? They don't even have
right.
a morale
So
value.
that's like their most defensive trait.
Correct. So it's like I think it's hard to do 8 actual wounds, like punch that many through in a single attack, right? In most cases, I think where these guys are going to have success is you want to get like around and behind the enemy as much as you can, because the ability to take the free maneuver and you can ignore terrain and units. You really want to like get in the backfield and start like burning guys up from behind.
Right.
You know.
So even
Um,
units like the House Clegane Mountains men, so they hit on 8 dice at full ranks on a 3+ critical
right.
blows, but vicious doesn't do anything. So it's like
Right.
there's a chance, but at the same time, like it's not a guarantee. And so regardless, if you take one of those like more killier units,
Mm.
you can put down the investment in tactics cards and other ways to boost the attacks and maybe pull it off. But like it's at a cost. And if it's mother dragons and there's 3 dragons like next to each other and you like charge in there and don't kill them, like these dragons are going to mess you up.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to mention is like these guys at 9 points are pretty expensive. At 7 points, it's nothing really. I mean, like that's a very low point value
A
for what is
point more than
effectively
a mammoth, yeah.
it's like flying cavalry, right? I mean, it's got a little less wounds, but their ability is just so strong. D3+3 wounds. So minimum is you're taking 4 wounds. You're taking as many as 6 plus the token. So you might lose like half a tray, 2/3 of a tray rather, with 1 attack.
Yeah.
Minimum you're losing a whole rank. So they could really, I mean, if all 3 of them fired at 1 unit, no matter what it is in the whole game, it's gonna die.
Right. And I mean, they still have access to like the regular Targaryen tactics deck. We haven't even talked about Daenerys's, but like hit and run, swift retreat, they can be positioning and getting out of danger. And, they're going to be somewhat hard to pin down.
Totally. I think that's how you play these guys. It's just you're never giving somebody a good shot at them. You don't allow the enemy to see where they are. You're too far away, so they have to take crappy charges, and you might lose one here or there. But if you can kind of keep that dance going for long enough, then it'll be pretty scary. I think.
What sort of dance? What sort of dance, Josh?
What do I call it?
You just said a dance, but don't you mean?
Or are you trying to line me up for a Dance of Dragons?
Yeah, Dance of Dragons. Come on, come on. That was a softball pitch here.
I think where these guys might struggle a little bit is going to be in sort of game modes that require you to hold objectives.
Yeah.
Because there's not a lot of like very cheap chaff infantry that exist for Targaryens right now, right?
Right.
Unless you lean into sort of neutrals, which that's totally an option, but something to think about. Like what do you do when you have to hold ground? You really don't want these guys camping on an objective, because then you really like part of their survivability is like not giving people a good charge. But you can't really do that if you're waiting on an objective.
Thank God, though. Like, right? Because I mean, Targaryen players have to make some difficult choices right now. But if they had like, I think when we see like people do those like unofficial like team battles where it's like Starks and Lannisters versus Night's Watch and Free Folk. If you have like a Targaryen player and a Free Folk player, and they've got like Free Folk raiders that can like kind of spam and like clog up charge lanes and dragons, that would just be a nightmare.
Oh, 100%. I think these guys are going to be really good. And in some like, I guess if you're doing like a 2-list sort of tournament, this is definitely like your Feast for Crows list should have dragons in it.
So for
I don't see how you lose that.
I mean, I'm referring, that's a lot of wounds, and I should probably, we got to try them out on the table here first, but can you just be like, I'm going to just murder my opponent? Like, what game mode are we playing? But if I can get my dragons them activate with a free attack or get off extra hits, like I'm just gonna try and melt your 5 units of whatever. My 3 dragons will start to just obliterate you.
I think that's a very strong possibility, especially with Daenerys literally going to grab whatever the best possible card is of her list of cards from anywhere in your deck or discard pile. Like that is so crazy.
Well, let's talk about what
Uh,
some of those cards are then.
yeah. Well, yeah, exactly.
Why don't you start us off with Dragon's Flight?
So when an enemy makes a move within short range of Daenerys's unit, one friendly Drogon, Rhaegal, or Viserion unit may pivot and make their free march action, which is kind of crazy because you can basically just, all right, I got out of position, I screwed up, my dragons are a little too far away, so they're going to go headhunting on Daenerys. Guess what? I'm just going to march my dragon back for free. That's where he should be.
And even like the model ignores, so the dragons have flight, so the model ignores units and terrain when moving.
Mhm.
So they could just make a free march action, just like fly over an enemy unit too, and just land right behind them.
Yeah. So
Jeez.
that's crazy. That's a crazy ability. That's really good.
And then we also have Dracarus, of course, infamous Dracarus. When Daenerys' unit activates, one friendly Drogon, Rhaegal, or Viserion unit within short range may make a free attack action.
Yeah, so I think you're seeing
Okay.
that's good. But here's the thing: you're also starting to see the pattern where I think this is them balancing out the dragons a little bit by the fact that they have to kind of stay within a bubble of Daenerys to really
Yes.
use a lot of these abilities. So it's like almost like you kind of want to like maybe have one sticking with her the whole time so that you could take advantage of this stuff. But otherwise, it's interesting. They kind of want you. They kind of want you to be close to mom, right?
Yeah, and so, oh man, yeah. There's gonna be some interesting combos with that. I can see maybe people start trying to think of like looking for potential ways that you can get additional activations on a unit.
Yep.
But luckily, that's pretty limited at this time.
So Fire Made Flesh, when a friendly Drogon, Rhaegal, or Viserion unit is attacked after defense dice are rolled, that unit suffers 1 wound for every 2 unblocked hits from this attack. So think about that. That basically turns their wounds into 16 plus wounds, right? For one turn when you have that card. So that's like a great get out of jail free card. Plus, if you're playing it right, you're scooping up both of those cards in your first couple of turns by using your NCU activations, right? So you can take like the tactics zone to draw 2 extra cards, activate another NCU and put them anywhere, and just get that card out of your deck guaranteed. So you can make sure you have 2 of them in hand all the time. That's going to be pretty silly. So I think that's probably the biggest one because that's going to really like for those turns where your dragons are out of position, you can make sure that you're not getting whomped.
It's like its own little mini game. Like this is like its own sub faction within the faction. This might be the coolest like faction identity out there. And then when I'm talking about, we have a whole nother Daenerys here, who's an NCU, the Queen of Marine. So she has Fear of the Dragon as her NCU ability. Daenerys begins the game with 2 order tokens on her. When an enemy combat unit makes a morale test, before dice are rolled, you may remove 1 order token from Daenerys. If you do, they must roll 1 additional d6 and discard the highest result. So you basically can ensure that you're going to have a much better chance of having someone fail a morale test.
Okay.
It's great for getting people to drop like objective tokens that they're carrying that are you can have them fail a panic test and they drop the objective token. The first time I looked at this, I misread it as like just quickly as I'm scanning through things like, oh my gosh, look at this next thing. I was thinking the D6 replaced the D3 somehow. And I was just like, what? And now I'm like, oh, it doesn't, like none of those words are in there.
Yeah.
But so this is good. It's not like crazy over the top good though.
No, that's pretty normal.
Pretty respectable. Like, but she's got some great tactics cards. These are phenomenal. And she can still take dragons. She doesn't have to take all 3 dragons, though. But they're at 9 points. Right. So right off the bat, she's got counterplot. We are all familiar with counterplot. The 3+ to cancel an effect on a tactics card. If you control the crown, you get to reroll the die.
Monster card.
It's a big part of the game, but I'm not always excited as I am about like Mammoth when I see like more counterplots being put out there.
Yeah. That's the counterplots. That's just no other way to say it. That's just a classic, awesome, strong card.
Promise of Fire. When an enemy NCU activates, Select 2 zones on the tactics board. If that NCU claims either zone this activation, one enemy combat unit becomes panicked, and one enemy combat unit suffers a panic test.
Mm.
So that's a cool way just to like get it going there. You have the panic token. So like I don't know if you'd really use her order tokens then because you're already putting a token down on them. Seems like a bit much to be like roll 3
Yeah.
dice and re-roll them. But I mean, at the same time, that basically guarantees they're gonna fail.
There's a very strong chance that but the thing is like so this one is little bit weird, right? Like you have to when they activate, so before they choose the zone, you have to choose 2 zones and say like if you take one of these, you're going to get a
Yeah.
panic test,
Right.
which is like obviously if you're playing a meta where you have like 3 NCUs a piece and like you always fill up the tactics board, this is very usable. However, if you're like otherwise you kind of have to activate it late, right? Later in the turn than you might want to otherwise. So I think it's fine. It's not doesn't blow your hair back, but it's pretty reasonable.
I just keep thinking of Mance Raider and Wildling Diplomacy and how the Free Folk are so much better. But sorry, I'm like trying to contain myself here. This stuff is cool though. But remember the
Yeah.
Mammoths guys we talked about earlier? They're just so good.
Yeah.
And then Targaryen Supremacy. When a friendly combat unit passes a panic test from being attacked, the attacker suffers a panic test with -2 to their roll. If you control the crown, the enemy also becomes panicked. So Targaryen
Ew.
Supremacy is just Lannister Supremacy, but more supreme.
Well, yeah. I mean, this is obviously like way harder to pull off, and also it's like it's a tactics card as opposed to a static ability. So it's generally worse, but that's one
Oh,
thing.
is it
Is
because
like,
I feel like we could put it out like anywhere now? It's like I don't have to wait for
yeah,
like you to attack me. Like if I have Lannister Supremacy, you're gonna attack that unit. You might choose a different target. Now it's like
right.
you hit one of my things, like boom, we're better than you.
But then right, but so what? Then you can only use it 2 times in the whole game.
That's true. That is true.
Like a Lannister supremacy is like cool. If like I'm actively dissuading you from attacking one of my units, that's great, right? Whereas this, it's like, yeah, you might be able to pull it off and like give people a panic test, but only maximum of 2 times if you drew both copies. So it's like it's okay.
Yeah. I mean, we have a much higher chance of my mammoths going awry against this commander than the other one.
Right,
I
right.
guess the other one they just like roast them. They just like burn them because
I
they
just think
can't trample the dragons.
right of the 2 versions of Targaryen of Daenerys, I think the actual attachment. I never thought I'd say this. The attachment version I actually like a lot better for her tactics cards and her relationship with the dragons. I feel like
But
is
she's a 21
strong.
point plus. Like there's so much cost in there. Like it's just weird to even compare
Sure.
the two, right? Where it's like, I mean, right here the NCU are getting like a free activation.
NCU commanders are, I think, generally speaking, much stronger. I'm just saying, like purely from like her tactics cards,
Okay, yeah.
bad. Plus, I think there's some game modes where it's better to have your commander on the field. I forget which one it is.
Yeah,
Dance of
that's
Dragons,
true.
where you have like you can like assign the points to other units, like you can mark them, right?
Fire and Blood, Fire and Blood.
That's it. Yeah. So like sometimes it's better to have that unit. Plus, you're getting a 6-point discount on 3 dragons. So think about free activations. That's a whole unit basically, right?
Yeah.
Like what is the most expensive NCU in the game? 5 points. So then 6-point discount on 3 dragons. Bring in Walder Frey, and you still have a point to play with on all your other stuff. Like it's I'd say she's a pretty substantial unit. The only thing is, of course, like you're against Starks and they happen to bring Jock and Hagar, the assassination mode, they can snipe out that unit.
Yeah, bad day.
Right, so
and then the dragon, when that happens, is going to turn minor spoilers ahead. And then it's going to melt the throne, and then it's going to fly away with her body.
Yeah,
that's a missed opportunity. If any of the Simon people are listening here, it's like, where's our ridiculous? We got those giant Kickstarter thrones. There's no interaction there. Come on, we got it.
I think the whole last season of Game of Thrones was a missed opportunity.
That's true. That's true. The funny thing is, when I just look at these two, the Mother of Dragons box is just such a great expansion to pick up as far as like a Heroes box 2 sort of thing.
100%.
The Queen of Marine, like right off the bat, it's just like it's clearly like more work. You're gonna actually have to be like thinking about your lists in like a really smart way and like finding these little like connections and ways to maximize these use of these tactics cards. Whereas
Yeah.
the mother dragon's like, I can look at this right now and I'm like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna put her on the table and we're put her in a unit and like we're gonna try and burn stuff. It just seems like so much more straightforward.
Oh,
Um,
100%. Yeah.
so I
I
don't know
think
if
though,
Queen
I
of
mean,
Marine is
the
bad. It's
MCU
just like
version,
I got to put more headspace into it.
well, it's like she's like a control commander, right? And like I don't know if that's really the Targaryen thing right now. I mean, maybe there's more stuff coming, but like there's not really a lot of like supporting characters for that style of play. Right?
Right.
There's not a like because that like I think the dragons themselves, like her kind of influencing morale is good because then obviously that plays off of Vicious really nicely. But like even Fear of the Dragon, it's like a 2 order limit. So it's like you're kind of like, you know what I mean? Like compare that to like Cersei Lannister, which is like a flat -2. Like I feel like that's a lot better because she does it every time she activates. Whereas like this one is like 2 times per game. You can force them to roll an extra dice.
Do you think there's something here that's like hinting at future stuff? Like, does this feel like a
Totally.
unit that's released that's like, oh, clearly there's going to be a unit that will really benefit from their opponent failing a morale test?
It's a good possibility.
Because, like,
Yeah.
I don't know. So, what would the Queen of Marine have? Queen of Marine, I guess we saw those Harakars, but they're not like, I don't know. That's not panic based there. I don't know. But okay, it's interesting. I'm interested to see where this goes, though. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know. So, do you
It's
think units like this? I mean, I'm kind of looking at this as being a big turning point for the game. The game's been doing phenomenally well. It started out with small numbers,
mhm.
but they're constantly growing.
Yeah.
Do we, is this one of those turning points where people are like, "Hey, it's a Game of Thrones game. Like, can I play with dragons?" And now it can be like, "Yes,
Yes.
yes, you can."
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to me, it feels like the game launched, I think, with like the top two sort of factions, right? And it was more grounded in reality, but we're starting to get more and more of like the fantasy elements, which is like good and bad, right? I mean, I still like the rank and file, just straight infantry, like medieval stuff.
Hmm.
But you gotta say, like, I mean, how could you not also appreciate some of the more fantastical elements, like the
Right.
dragons, like the mammoths, like the giants? Like, those are some really like awesome things. I think I think what we'll need is like maybe if some of the other factions start getting like some more of the war machines and whatnot, just because I still feel like some factions still have like kind of a little bit more. I'm just thinking about Baratheons, unfortunately. They have a slightly more sort of boring, not boring. You know what I mean? Like they don't have like that big splashy unit. Like I don't have any
What
like
would be the
single
big splash unit for that, though? I wonder. Besides, like a
siege units.
shadow.
No, no, they should. Well, yeah, it could be. Yeah, it could be a shadow that stabs you in the neck.
Yep, just runs
But
around on the board, just like woohoo, shadow.
yeah, why not? You get one time use.
Oh, it's just like a
So
solo tray. Just like
right, solo tray shadow beast, which is like just you basically sacrifice it and then it kills any attachment or NCU
hmm.
automatically, and
This
that
is
could
why
be
you're
our.
not going to design the game. Like, yes, it kills whatever I want when it's yeah.
Yeah.
No, I
I
guess
don't
not.
have to roll, and then you have no way to get around it, and then I just instantly kill
You've got to put
whichever
other
character is.
things in there. It's got to have like it's got to be birthed and have like order like birthing tokens, and you can spend a
Right, right.
token to re-roll to see if it does it. And,
You have to get a unit with Stannis in it next to a unit with Melisandre in it, and they
oh
have to
God,
connect to each other.
this is make like
And then the
super
shadow.
awkward moments in the games. I don't even know. Is this like appropriate? Do we have to put like a content label on this podcast now?
Oh, it's fine.
This is
Then the
we get
shadow baby was born.
okay.
When a
All
mommy
right.
Melisandre and a daddy Stannis
Okay.
love each other very much.
Oh, your future children are going to be very confused.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I don't know. I think like all I'm saying is like they need something that's like a solo tray kind of thing. Like they don't have like a siege engine or anything like that, where a lot of the other armies at this point do.
Yeah, hopefully things don't get too crazy though. I do like it grounded
Same.
in more of the heroics of the individual units. Although
Yeah,
giants are freaking cool. But down the
totally.
line, I wouldn't want like every faction to have monsters. Maybe cool
Right. Yeah.
units
Well, of
certainly,
course
but we
not.
don't be
Yeah.
like, hey, like here's my like lord. Here's the Lord of Light, like a fiery avatar, and it's like, was that in the? It's like, well, it is now.
No, I prefer it to be more like low fantasy. Like, I mean, one of the cool things about Game of Thrones was like when the show starts, the concept of all these fantastical elements, like they're all just like kind of in disbelief that they even exist, right?
Right.
So it's like one of those things where like over time you gradually go like, oh wow, that stuff is real. So it felt more like it was like stuck in that sort of regular medieval era, and then over time you start to
What do we as like a community like, angrily demand now? Like we can't shout like where are my dragons for very much longer.
Martells.
Martells, everyone's just right onto that. Just be like, where are the Martells? Come on. Okay,
I mean, that's
we
the
can get
last
behind that.
big missing faction, right? Because we've got Greyjoys coming. Martellus is like the last major house because it looks like Highgarden is part of Baratheon, right?
Yeah.
So, and I mean, I'm sure there's like some like punk rock Game of Thrones fans that are going to say like, "What about House Aaron, man?"
Don't anger the House Aaron fans. They are.
I know. Like,
they're
who
passionate.
cares? Yeah.
I'm nervous now. No. Yeah. No. It's
Didn't do anything in the books, right? Like stone cold nothing. I mean, I know what they did in the show, but at least where we are in the books, they haven't done anything at all.
So from my understanding, and I may be misinterpreting this, but they keep saying like this sort of like knowingly nodding, we have the rights to all the books, like that they can cover the material. So right now it's kind of grounded in the War for the Five Kings. Does it have to be? Are we going to be going backwards and having like more, stuff from like Fire and Blood or like other eras?
Oh.
I mean, it seems like they got sort of like limitless scope of what they can do.
I mean,
here.
you could have Robert Baratheon, you could have people riding on dragons, you can do all kinds of stuff, right? So I think there's still so much though that they can cover from the books that they haven't gotten to yet, that I think we've got a lot of time before we really have to worry too much about that. But in the meantime, there's still a lot of game. I think Martells are probably next though. I think that's probably.
I mean, that was on the original box art, right? When we look at the symbols, let's see. Oh yeah, I was gonna say for a second, wow, I almost said who is the crow, but that's Night's Watch. We got the rose. Yeah. So, I mean, that would be the one. And there was that like infamous misinterpretation or that infamous line from Michael Chanel about like 9 factions that everyone took as like, there's only going to be 9 factions or there's definitely going to be 9 factions.
Right.
But that would bring us up to that range. And then we'll see what else we got coming. Man, I'm just so excited. Are you going to pick up either of these boxes? I know you're playing Baratheons, but like, are you going to just get dragons just like to paint them? What do you think?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
I mean, I think I'm going to end up with mammoths. And I'm going to end up with dragons. Who am I kidding? But
I mean, dragons are pretty rad. I guess what the interesting thing there is going to be like, what do you fill in the rest of the army with, right? Like when you have that 21 points. But I think, if you kept it, some unsullied swordsman, maybe, you do it, or just spam the rest of it, like just fill it in with some mercenaries, get some Stormcrows or some House Bolton guys in there. It'd be cool.
Oh, I'm just so excited to see what some of the community lists are. So
yeah, it's going to be awesome.
And we don't have release dates for these. They haven't even been officially revealed, but there's all sorts of rumors out there. So hopefully it's soon, and it'd be great to have by this holiday season.
It feels like the right time. Who knows though?
Down.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, man, it's like it's just so funny because I feel like I've waited for years for this moment, and it's come, and I'm like so excited, and I'm like, I think I'm just like still in shock that it's actually here. It almost doesn't feel real. Maybe I'll just feel differently when I hold them in my hands.
Yeah, I mean, the models look awesome, and I think they're going to be sweet to play with for sure.
So absolutely fantastic. I hope everybody is excited as we are, and let us know. Shoot us on the Facebook page some, what you're thinking for how you're going to build your list. Are you going to run dragons? Are you going to be running, the mother of dragons with all 3 dragons? Maybe is that a trap? Are there major concerns? What game modes do you think might be awesome to be fielding those 3 creatures? And we'll cycle back around once we get some time to start putting some ideas together, because we're pretty close to when we found this out. And when we thought on it more, maybe there'll be different maps where it's like 100%, like you want your dragons on, Fire and Blood, or maybe on other ones it's like, yeah, no, you don't want this. Like you can't really control and contest all the points too easily, because that's gonna be a hard thing, right? They got to stay within short range to get most of the benefits from the mother dragons.
Right. Yeah. Well, at least for the free attack, right? So right. I mean, obviously that's the other one, the other 2, oh gosh, what was it called? It was like Fire Made Flesh and the Dragon's Flight. Like those don't require it, but the Dracarus does. So that kind of like wants you to keep them in that bubble.
Well, man, this is so exciting. I can't wait to just do more content on this. And when I get my hands on them, I'll do like an unboxing and make some videos. Been waiting for dragons for a long time. And I'm going to have some mammoths soon to be stomping around. So I look forward to, having my mammoths take their morning constitutional walking through your Baratheon troops. I hope you're ready.
I'm ready.
And to everybody listening, thanks for your continued support. And in the meantime, we hope you get your miniatures on the table.